214, please stand.
We have this hope that burns within our hearts, hope in the coming of the Lord. We have this faith that carries alone and bold. Lifting the promise of His word. We believe the time is near when the nations far and near shall awake and shout and sing, Hallelujah, Christ is King. We have this faith that burns within our hearts, hope in the coming of the Lord. We have united in Jesus Christ our Lord. We are united in His love. We love for the waiting people of the world, people who need our Savior's word. Soon the heavens will open wide, eyes will come to praise His bride. Shall you never will sing, Alleluia, Christ is King. We have this hope with faith in God's great love. We are united in Christ.
You may be seated. For those of you who do not have a bulletin or have not been here, I just want to welcome you and to let you know that Chad and Fadia are going to be having this here, which would normally be the Sabbath school class time. And then we're going to try to round it up at around 2:30 to 2:45, 2:50, something like that. No, less than that. 2:35, 2:30, 2:35. And then at 2:45, we'll be starting the divine service with garden of prayer and all that. So just giving you a heads up what's going on. And I'm going to turn it over to Chad and Fadia now.
All right. Good afternoon. How about we begin together with a word of prayer first? Father in heaven, thank you so much for a wonderful, blessed Sabbath, and thank you for being able to reunite with some old friends, Lord, from many years ago. It's such a blessing, and it just gives us a little piece of what heaven's going to be like, Lord, being reunited with loved ones, and especially with you, especially with Jesus, this friend that we've had our whole life, and that we all have in common. It's just going to be so wonderful to be together. And Lord, we thank you that Jesus has given us wonderful truths in nature, that as we behold nature, as we partake of these wonderful things, there's healing and there's blessings that come our way, and we thank you for that. And we pray this morning that your Holy Spirit would guide and bless as we share. In Jesus' name, amen.
Well, we're going to talk about some natural remedies. So this is kind of a, just teaching and learning experience. And we're going to look at ones that have been tested in scientific journals. You'll see several of them have been tested head-to-head against drug medication and been shown to be just as good or better with significantly less side effects most of the time. And so the Bible says in Psalms 104, verse 14, it says,
He causes the grass to grow for the cattle and the herb for the service of man, that he may bring forth food out of the earth.
So God has blessed us with all kinds of things out of the earth for food, and he also gives us things for healing also. And now to give an example of something that is not so much of a natural remedy, but I just want to share with you some research on antibiotics a moment. So antibiotics are probably one of the most popular drugs in history, and antibiotics have been shown to slow the growth and kill many types of infection. In some cases, such as before surgery, antibiotics can prevent infection from occurring. Antibiotics are fast-acting. Some will begin working within a few hours. They're also easy to take, and just some of the things that we've seen. But one of the things that many people don't know is the research that has been shown about the side effects that may not be immediate, that may be long-term. And so research has shown antibiotics and depression. In a UK study, over 200,000 people, it was shown that every course, that's every time you go to, doctor gives you a prescription, every course of antibiotics increases an individual's risk for depression by 23 to 25%, and for every 2 to 5 courses, it increases the risk of depression by 40 to 56%, and also raises the chances of having anxiety. So it can cause mental health disturbances by negatively impacting evidently it seems to be from the bacteria within the gut. We do a seminar called the Gut-Brain Connection, showing research on how having a healthy gut can impact your mind positively, but the converse is also true. Having an unhealthy gut can make you more prone to be depressed, anxious, and have mental health issues. But let's go even further. Antibiotics and heart disease.
Research on 36,429 women reported in the European Heart Journal reveals that higher usage of antibiotics during middle age and later life is significantly correlated with cardiovascular disease events in later life. And I can attest to this in my mother. She, in a few years back, had a heart attack, but prior to her heart attack, she had been on antibiotics for a couple of years, one round after the other, because she had some growth happening on her head, and the doctors couldn't figure it out, so they just kept giving her another antibiotic and another one and another one, and it like worked for a second, and then it come right back, and not dealing with the core issue of what it was. But she also had sleep apnea, so that's another thing that affects your heart. But with all that said, the timing of it was incredible, that after all of that, antibiotic use, then she literally dropped dead in the ER from a heart attack. They had to resuscitate her. And it was the left anterior descending, that's like the widow maker. And if she had not been in the ER, she would not have made it. So that's just one anecdotal story, but the science is showing us that there's a correlation between these things, overusage of these things especially.
And antibiotics and Parkinson's, a nationwide case-controlled study of Finland revealed a 41% increased risk of Parkinson's disease in people taking certain oral antibiotics. And it seemed to be a delayed effect of up to 15 years, potentially because of bacterial changes in the gut. And the greatest correlation was seen in certain kinds of antibiotics. But here's the thing. So people come down with disease later in life, and they figure, well, it just kind of is what it is. Who thinks, well, maybe it was those antibiotics I took 15 years ago. Maybe that's a factor. You just don't even think about it. Who would even notice, right? And so antibiotics and cancer. The European Journal of Cancer looked at research on 125,000+ people with cancer matched with 490,000 control individuals, and they discovered that people who took more than 5 courses of penicillin had a 40% increased risk of gastric cancer. And I grew up taking antibiotics all the time and had gut issues, had depression. And so it's interesting. We don't think about it. Doctors hand them out like candy to children, which should be careful on handing out candy to children also, by the way, right? And so but these things are just prescribed like they're safe or something, right? And okay, there may be times where it may seem necessary, but they're passed out for every little tiny unnecessary problem.
And sometimes for things that don't even cure, you
like
can have a viral infection and
they'll give you antibiotics, right?
And
you'll have like bronchitis, which the vast majority of the time is going to be viral, and like 90% of the time is a viral issue, but they'll just give you some antibiotics, and partly because people just want something. I came to you, you better give me a drug, right? That's what I'm here for, drugs. And so I understand.
So they figure the placebo effect.
Yeah, it's like, you think it works, here, take this, won't do a lick of good, but might help you have depression later on, or Parkinson's or something. But so lung cancer, and I'm not saying nobody should ever take them, we're just looking at the research, but what about lung cancer? They found 40% increased risk of lung cancer in those who took more than 5 courses of penicillin or different antibiotics. And antibiotics and rheumatoid arthritis, they found chances of becoming diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis was 60% higher in people who were exposed to antibiotics. Look at this. These are like some of the most common diseases that people suffer with, and all of the ones we've looked at are potentially increased by usage of antibiotics. And so other diseases, studies have been done that suggest that other diseases like juvenile idiopathic arthritis, autoimmune liver disease, and type 1 diabetes may be increased by antibiotic use. And most of the time you don't think about these things, nor are you warned of this. Well, hey, I'm going to give this to you, but it might increase your likelihood for depressions, Parkinson's, idiopathic forms of arthritis, autoimmune. If you knew all these things were a potential and you had a very, very minor issue that isn't even remotely have a chance at being deadly, it might make people think more about it if they knew the potential side effects. So we want to talk about some things that don't have all kinds of terrible side effects, some natural things that God has given to us. This one is very, very simple. Probably many of you, if not most of you, have it in your house already, and it is honey and wounds. Now we're going to look at the research, but the use of honey goes all the way back to ancient Egypt. It was used in ancient China. The Romans used it. It's been used around the world for different ailments. And here's some research on honey and wound healing.
Patients that had received plastic surgery had on the same wound covered half with a standard surgical dressing and the other half with a honey dressing. Isn't that interesting? What do you think happened? The half that was dressed with the honey healed about a third narrower. Like for plastic surgeons, this is very significant because what do people want when they do plastic surgery? No scars, right? No scars. Wow, how cool is that? The study concluded by stating that the aesthetic or the look of the wound could be enhanced by using a honey dressing.
This has been used forever for that, and when they actually put it to the test, it actually does work. And what happens to canker sores with honey? This is a fascinating study. This is phenomenal. What happens when you have people put on a standard steroid cream made for canker sores, or an over-the-counter pain gel, which is just to cover the pain, put on canker sores, or simply putting honey on the sores? Well, and the red is the steroid group. So what happens, they begin to take it on day 0.
What are the...
So on the amount of pain is top to bottom, and the amount in the days are from left to right. And so within 4 days, they have healing. Then when you have the store-bought cream, 8 days, and the honey, 1 day. Whammo. That is, it's just incredible, right? It's like, which one would you want, right? But I know some of you might be thinking, okay, Chad, But is it safe to put in your mouth? Okay, nobody's actually asking that question. Well, there were no side effects in any of the groups, evidently, but honey should not be given to babies under 1 year old because potentially it can have botulism, and that can be something that can be more dangerous to the infants. But
and the thing is botulism is in everything. You'll hear about it tomorrow at our canning session. It's in everything. But when you and I eat the honey, our digestive juices are able to kill that off. You know, like it's just a spore. And so we can kill off spores. But little babies, their digestive juices aren't as acidic as yet. And so that's why they're more prone to it with things like honey. So it's not that the honey's bad, it's just their stomachs can't handle it at that time.
So it's something very simple that can be used. And I mean, there's actually a number of things. We could have gone on and on, but we just wanted to give you kind of an overview of a few things that have been shown according to the research. Now, what about lemon balm and stress? Anybody have lemon balm going in their garden at all? Yeah, some of you do. We do too. And just rubbing it and smelling it, that is, to me, that's like a heavenly scent. I think it is one of the nicest smelling plants. I mean, just the smell is incredible. And here's lemon balm. Research had already shown that lemon balm, or Melissa officinalis, has a calming and mild sedative effect, but no study had been done yet, conducted to see, to actually cause stress to the patients to see how lemon balm could help alleviate the stress. So isn't that nice, having a study where you go in and they mess with you a bit so you're stressed? And so the researchers in a placebo-controlled, double-blind, crossover study tried 2 different doses of lemon balm extract, 300 milligrams and 600 milligrams, against placebo in a lab-induced stress on the participants. And what did they find? While taking 600 milligrams of lemon balm, they had an increase in calmness during the stressor, but they also had less alertness. So it did have a side effect. But
Too much.
yeah, it was too much. But while taking the 300 milligrams of lemon balm, they enhanced their speed in mathematical processing without lowering their accuracy.
Wow.
So it had a benefit without the negative. So once again, I'm the kind of person, and my wife always says this, I'm the kind of person who thinks if 1 is good, 10 is better, right? And the study shows, is that true in this case?
No.
No, it actually is detrimental. So even a good thing like an herb can be overdone and can become detrimental to your health, right? So unless you're, I mean, very few people are thinking, man, my mind is just too clear. I wish I were a little duller. And so 600 milligrams can do that, but I wouldn't suggest it. So you may know about this. This flower grows. Maybe it grows here. It probably does. It grows wild by us. I had planted some seeds and they didn't grow up a couple years ago. And then I just found it all over the front of our property, which was not from our seeds. There's just no way. It was too far away, almost a quarter mile.
She got it.
What is it? St. John's Wort. It is St. John's Wort. That's right. It grows wild. And it's interesting that... Okay, it grows wild here too, and I think God just specifically has this stuff all over the regions of the world that are in the north. If you go up like in northern Michigan, you go in the Upper Peninsula where people really struggle with depression, and it just grows beautifully out in the wild. It's like right in the area where the people would be prone to having certain issues. Often the remedy is growing right in the area. Mm-hmm. And so, but you probably heard that people use it for depression. It's called Hypericum Perferatum. And the word perferatum, if you ever see some, so if you see this growing somewhere, you take one of the leaves and hold it up to the sky, not like with the sun behind it, but you will see all these perforations, these tiny little holes. That's why it's called perferatum, because it has these perforated leaves. That's one of the telltale signs of it. And so, yes, let's go on to... Yeah. Yeah, we'll go on to the next one.
But there's a. Are you going to tell the side effects of it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So, St. John's Wort and menopause symptoms. The Mayo Clinic. Sorry, it's crooked. I don't know why it's way off to the side like that. The Mayo Clinic reports on the research on a mixture of black cohosh and St. John's Wort that helped with menopause symptoms, specifically hot flashes. It worked better than black cohosh alone. This is one particular study. Now, something to realize that medications, there are many medications that may cause depression. Journal of the American Medical Association reports that 37% of adult Americans are taking a medication that has depression as a side effect. So a third of Americans, a little over. And they reported that taking 3 or more medications that had depression as a side effect could significantly increase your risk for depression. So you could be taking all these drugs, just one of them will increase your risk, but taking 3 of them makes a significant impact. So let's look at St. John's wort versus placebo. A study of 105 people put on either placebo or 300 milligrams of St. John's wort 3 times a day, and 67% of the people taking St. John's wort lowered their levels of depression versus 28 on the placebo. Now that word wort, by the way, is just an old English term for plant. It's not wart like a skin issue, W-A-R-T. Wort is like there's a plant called motherwort. And I think I have that. Research has been done on that also and shows it lowers depression levels. That's why it was called motherwort, because it was a mother plant that they would give to either pregnant or women after having their babies for depression and so forth and other issues. And research has shown that it actually does have a benefit. And I think it also helps with heart.
Lowers blood pressure.
Lower blood pressure. And a number of studies have been done I have a video on that. And on our channel, by the way, Health and Homestead, we go into the data on those things also. And looking at this, 29, this is not like one-off study, 29 different studies with over 5,000 patients have been conducted looking at the effectiveness of St. John's wort or extracts. And St. John's wort has been compared to placebo and different medications, including selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, known as SSRIs, and tri- or tetracyclic antidepressants. And it turns out that St. John's wort is as effective as the standard medications in research trials, and St. John's wort has fewer side effects than the medications. No side effects necessarily, but it has significantly fewer. And the Journal of Clinical Psychopharmacology reported on St. John's wort versus Prozac. You've probably heard of Prozac before, right? And what did they find? It was a double-blind, randomized, placebo-controlled trial. So this is one of the standards for when you're really looking to know, is it actually working? And so what did they find? St. John's wort was significantly more effective than both Prozac and placebo. So this is phenomenal. And the stuff just grows all over the place. So you can grab some, hang it upside down in your house, and then you can make a tea out of it and these kind of things. And so this is just incredible. And research from the journal Frontiers of Psychology revealed that depressed individuals who used antidepressant medications were significantly more likely to have recurrent depressive experiences in the future than if they had never taken the drug in the first place. And that's a sad thing. And if you've been there, it is what it is. But the point is, they actually make you more likely to be depressed in the future, the actual drug medications. So God has made these. I guess I didn't put it in here, but there are some side effects. Like you probably don't want to take it if you are taking depression medications, so you want to be careful with that. Another thing that it does is that you may have heard before, it makes your skin more sensitive to sunlight, and so you could be more likely to have a sunburn. But thinking about this, that may actually be one of the benefits of it.
Yeah.
You say, what do you mean? That sounds like a negative thing. Because in the winter, if you're taking it in the winter months, it might make you more sensitive to light, and who knows, maybe that's one of the factors on why it works. And you could use it in this, in the winter season rather than in the summer. So, unless people struggle with the depression in the summer anyway. Were you going to say something?
I mean, during the summer, it'd be good just to get out.
Yes,
And
get the
so
sun that you can. And by the way, even in the winter, getting out, even in, we live up in Michigan, so we're further north than you, and we just bundle up when we're home and go for a hike. And so, we live in the middle of nowhere next to National Forest, so there's plenty to hike. But even in the dark, dreary Michigan north, getting out there simply makes you feel better because it is always lighter outside than it is inside. I mean, it's significant. It's like 100 times. You don't notice it. You look outside and you're like, oh, it's not that bright out there right now. But it is massively brighter than inside this room. And
Yeah, we met a lady in Norway when we were speaking there, and she was from like the Oslo area, which is more southern, but then she moved way up north to like
I forget the name, but it's in the
Is it
Arctic Circle.
Tromsø or something like that.
Maybe.
Something like that. Anyway, she went way up there, and you know it's very dreary way up north. But she said if I got up in the morning when there was a blue hue, there's just like this blue light, and she said when I got up and walked in that, she said it just lifted my mood.
She wouldn't have depression then.
She wouldn't have depression.
Even though
if
they'd
she
never
did
see
that.
the sun in the winter. The
Yeah.
sun would never crest the horizon.
So there's just something about getting out there. It's the fresh air, the brightness, even though it's not as bright as we think it should be, it's still brighter than indoors. So just a little side note. But I just love this whole concept of, you know, St. John's wort, you know, you put it up to the sun and it's perforated and then it affects us that way. You know, it gives us more enhanced effect of the sun during the winter because we need that. And where does it grow mostly? In the north. God is so good.
So another one that this to me is a very, very, very exciting remedy. And it grows wild in the United States. It's originally from Europe. But I guess it says it, so I'll say it. The root of the Comfrey plant has been used as a remedy for hundreds of years. It was a native plant in Europe, but it's made its way to the United States and now grows as a weed. It just grows, you may have it on your property, and you may not even know what it is, but it grows these beautiful little flowers there, and that one was taken in my garden there. And
The hummingbirds and the bees love this.
yes. And by the way, the leaves also work. You can use either the leaves or the root. And what does it actually do? It does a number of things.
The Latin name for comfrey finds its root in the meaning I grow together.
It's kind of a play on words. I didn't realize that it has its roots.
Roots. And it's also known as knit bone or bone knit because, and it, you know, I grow together. It actually helps regrow your bones. I know it sounds crazy that you could do that, but science is showing this. And
We'll give you an anecdotal
we'll
story.
give you
You can do it. You can share
okay.
it with them.
So one of our friends, she put it up on Facebook, and she had broken her toe, and it wasn't healing.
And she's a young, like fit, healthy young lady.
And it wasn't healing. She had gone to the doctor, and he said, well, let's just see if it'll heal on its own. And it wasn't healing. And so she went back to the doctor, and he said, yeah, this is not healing. Maybe we might have to do surgery. So she said, okay, well, I want to try a few things before we go that route. And he says, that's fine. You know, we still have to schedule and everything. So what she did is she went home and she started using Comfrey Root powder, and she made a paste. She made a poultice out of it, and she wrapped it around her toes. And within a few days, she's like
2 days.
yeah, she could walk on it. And she's like, I think it's healed. Because she knew for weeks it wasn't healing. She continued to limp and have trouble. And then all of a sudden, the pain is gone. And she's like, I think it's healed. So she goes back to the doctor. She's like, can you do an x-ray? Because I think it's healed. He's like, there's no way. He said, there is no way that in a few days that you're going to have that kind of effect from something that's transdermal, right? And
That you put on top.
that you put on topically. And so she said, just humor me, just do the x-ray. I just want to see this. He's like, okay, he did it. And sure enough, you see the 2 x-rays and you see the bone being healed again. And she's just like, this is incredible. And then he said, he's like, wow, I would have never believed it. He says, we are not taught he says, we're not taught that putting something on your skin affects internal like organs and stuff and bones and all that. He says, we are not taught that. But he says, now my patients that want to do more natural stuff, I will definitely be recommending this to them. Isn't that cool? And then she was out and about and talked to some guy at a restaurant or something, and then told him her story. And he's like, "Oh, I have knee pain. You think it'll help? It's an old injury. Try it. Why not?" So he tries it, and sure enough, an old injury of his knee is healed. Then another person, I forget, but then we have this young lady that we recently had on our YouTube channel, and she makes this comfrey salve from the leaves. And she started this when she was like 12, and she'll go to like a conference or something and have her booth there and tells people about it. And then people try it and they're like, "This is incredible."
And now she's a ripe old age of 16 now, so she's really grown up.
And it's incredible the stories she tells you. It's just, like a man that was in a wheelchair. I forget what he had to start doing. It was like the disease was progressing, and she said, "Just give it a try."
And he had finally just said, "I'm done. I'm going to be in a wheelchair for the rest of my life."
Yeah. And so then she has the wife, apply it 3 times a day, and then he does it, and then he comes again like within the week, and
he's able to get up out of the...
He can get up out of the wheelchair. Then it comes a few weeks later, there's no wheelchair, he's on a walker. And then came a few days later, and then he's just on a cane, and it was just like, are you kidding me? This stuff is incredible.
And then he's finally just walking, right? Like
yeah,
in the
then
end,
he was finally walking. And then they had some neighbors that he had some knee pain or elbow pain, I forget, and she said, "Well, why don't you use it?" The next morning, he had already had relief. The next morning, his cousin is at their door, and she's like, "Can you give me that salve that you gave my cousin? Because it worked, and I want some." And you wouldn't believe, like, this is just a 16-year-old being faithful to whatever.
Another person had, like, I think it was 20-year-old frostbite
Side
pain,
effects.
like some kind of neuropathy from having frostbite. And so you just think, well, after that long, I mean, you've had it for so long, what are you going to do?
20 years.
20 years. They put it on, and it healed. Not just covers the pain. It's one thing to cover pain. That's good, and that's really handy, but it actually healed the issue, and so that the pain just goes away and no longer have to suffer with that anymore. So, but we haven't showed you any. These have been all anecdotal stories, but let's look at the actual research on it. A placebo-controlled, double-blind, randomized trial was conducted to assess the effect of a cream of Comfrey Root extract on back pain, either lower or upper back pain. And 120 patients were put on either placebo or the Comfrey cream, and those taking the placebo decreased their pain by 37.8%. And those who used the Comfrey lowered their pain by 95.2% in 5 days. That is incredible. And the pain dropped 33% within 1 hour. So these just are incredible. Honestly, I believe in Comfrey like a few other things. Just so you know, when you hear people who believe in natural remedies, you typically, like today we think of quackery a lot of times, but I'm going to tell you, I'll be very honest with you, many of the drugs we give in hospitals are closer to quackery. Give you an example. Like some of the medications that are given to heart patients will lower their chances of having a heart attack over the next 5 years by what percent? 3%. If I had a natural remedy that lowered your risk of a heart attack by 3%, you'd call me a quack. You would. You'd be like, these people came up in front and wasted our time, and yet these are some of the most prescribed drugs in the world.
And we still have #1 killer is heart disease,
right? You have other drugs we give that will not reverse. We know how to reverse type 2 diabetes in 95% of people. And the drugs we give do not reverse the disease. They just lower chances of having high blood sugar, but they still help the disease progress by not convincing someone to change their lifestyle. And so I'm not telling anybody what to do. The point is, secondarily, I don't believe that every natural remedy works. I'm not someone who thinks, oh, if it's a natural remedy, it must be good, it must work. I heard somebody say it. Now, I love science, and so I look up to see, is there scientific evidence to back this up? Now, just because there's not scientific evidence doesn't mean that something doesn't work. But if there's good evidence that shows something doesn't work, well, then I'm probably going to be somewhat persuaded by that also. And so maybe, unless there's some bias in the study, but I'm not someone who just believes anything that's natural must be good for you, because are there dangerous plants out there? Yes, my newest video on my YouTube channel is called, what, like the most deadly plant? There's a plant that grows wild called water hemlock. Extremely deadly. And so the point being...
And it's a nasty death.
Oh, it's like a torturous... So your body starts shaking to the point where your joints begin to pop out of joint just because your muscles are shaking so bad. So just because something's natural doesn't mean it's good for you, right? So we're not here to promote that, but let's look at a little... Yeah.
With that said, if you look at the history of herbs and then you look at the history of medications, which has killed more people?
There are hardly any deaths every year from natural remedies. The numbers are near like nil, close to. And there is 100,000 plus people die every single year in the United States of medications prescribed correctly. That doesn't involve all the accidental medications given incorrectly. 100,000 people. So, because you'll often hear, well, yeah, you got to be careful with those. Well, sure you do. You should be careful with anything. But drugs are the 7th leading cause of death when they're prescribed correctly. The medical system is the 3rd leading cause of death when you put it all together. And this is not from like quacks and this is from Johns Hopkins. Johns Hopkins says that the medical system is the 3rd leading cause of death after heart disease, cancer, the medical system. And so that's not to put anybody down. It is just... these are what John Hopkins is not trying to come out and show that the medical system is bad. That wouldn't be their goal, obviously.
So earlier, Chad talked about autonomy, right? And how it makes you happier. We need to have more autonomy when it comes to our health. We have gotten this idea that somebody else outside of me knows my body better than I do, right? You live with yourself every day. The doctor doesn't live with you every day. How on earth does he know every little thing that's going wrong with you every single moment of the day? You do, so therefore you should start learning more about these things and then have autonomy in your health, and then it makes you happier, right? It'll make you happier. And again, this is not to come and condemn the medical system, but just to open our eyes to, am I putting my health in the hands of somebody else that may not have the same ideas that I do? And am I hurting myself in turn by doing that, right? This is all side stuff. We don't normally go in all that.
Yeah, we don't actually normally talk about all this. But the other issue is too, if you're in a car accident, you don't just put some charcoal on, if your arm is all twisted and bent,
Yes.
It's like, you want to go to the doctor, you want them to deal with it, you want them to set the bone. I love the aspects of the medical system, especially for acute issues or for certain things that we have no other options. But it is also good to know the side effects of what they may be doing. So let's look at some research on osteoarthritis. It's a painful disease that can often affect the hands, hips, or knees. As the joints lose some of their cartilage, the bones may grow in and fill the place. This can cause serious pain, you can imagine. Well, here's researchers put Comfrey gel cream or a placebo to the test on the efficacy of helping osteoarthritis pain. And what did they find? After 3 weeks, the Comfrey group had over 4 times lower pain scores than the placebo group. This stuff is incredible. I've used it myself also. I'll tell you, just to give you a quick example, we have often basements are damp and moldy. And we stayed in somebody's house about 3 months back or something like that. And he told us, it's very clean. And so we went down there and stayed there. And both of us, our bodies started to ache. And mold can cause arthritic suffering. And so we're in this basement and we're just normally when we're speaking and staying in places, we enjoy our time there. We're not looking I'm not here going, man, I can't wait to get out of Ohio. It's not, I'm not sitting here thinking about that. That's not on my radar. I don't even think about it. I enjoy the time that I'm here. But there, we were literally just hoping to get out of.
Because we were there for like 2 weeks or so we were counting down the days.
And so we're having like head pain. I felt like I had pressure. And I'm not a person who just constantly thinks I'm sick, or something like that. This was just, and I knew it because I had a situation where we were staying in somebody else's basement in Michigan because we were speaking there, and I began to lose my memory. And it was horrifying. I'm a young man, super healthy, and I'm doing an evangelistic meeting. And as I'm speaking to the people there, typically you see the faces and you get to remember the faces. You might forget a name, but I fully couldn't remember the faces day after day of meeting people. And it was scaring me because as an evangelist, you can't not remember the people that you're visiting with. So I talk with them. Hi, John. John. What's your name? Oh, I'm John. I'm Chad. Okay, we talk for a while. Well, the next night, even if I'd forget a name, I'd remember that I met you. But each night it was like, hi, I'm Chad. And like, yeah, we talked last night. And it was horrible. I mean, like for a young person to have this when you never had this before, it was scary. And I looked up, sure enough, there's research, not on humans because it wouldn't be ethical to like stick somebody in a moldy room and see if it affects their memory. But there is evidence from rodent studies that it can affect that. And so we knew that. So long story short, we're in somebody's basement. We're having this arthritic pain. And I use some of the Comfrey Root powder. Actually, we grow it right outside our house. You can dry it, or you could probably use it just raw, fresh also. Just wrap it around the skin and made significant benefit. Like in one night, you could see a significant, where I had it for weeks and weeks, continual pain, even after being there. Just making a significant benefit. I didn't keep doing it enough, but it's probably 90, I still have it I don't feel it right now, but if I'm really pushing on something, but I didn't do it long enough if I would have done it 3 times a day, I'll bet it would be 100% gone at this point. But, so you can see this. In addition, the Comfrey group, this is amazing, had less than half the amount of side effects compared to the placebo. Now, the placebo is a placebo, and they were having more side effects than the actual remedy itself. And I'm guessing it's because if you're suffering pain, you have more side effects, whereas if something heals you from your pain, you don't notice any side effects, right? But let's look at Comfrey Root in the Middle Ages. Comfrey Root was used for rheumatism in the Middle Ages. Nicholas Culpeper, who lived from 1616 to 1654, stated in the work, this is the actual spelling, the English physician, that comfrey was beneficial for, and he said it was beneficial, these are his words, except for I changed one because it was kind of vulgar-ish. Spitting, blood in the urine, it must not have been vulgar back then, but it just sounds like it today. So spitting, blood in the urine, inward wounds, bruises, sick, I don't know what that is, bloody flux, term stops, whites, nerves cut, muscles cut, sharp humors, wounds, ruptures, broken bones, knotted breast, hemorrhoids, inflammation, gout, pain joints, and gangrenes. Now, this is what he says. They haven't done a study on all of these things yet, and I don't even know if we know what all those things are. I'm not sure what some of that is, but let's look at a little bit more research here. Comfrey Root Cream was again tested against placebo for musculoskeletal rheumatism, and it turned out to be better than placebo and diclofenac, so a drug medication. So time and time, that's for rheumatism, like having this arthritic pain. And so people find phenomenal success with this, but it could be if you're still living in a moldy house, it's not going to work. So if your arthritic pain is actually from you have mold in your house, you have serious mildew issues, remedies can't always take care of when you have a cause of a disease. Just like I don't really expect that the drugs that doctors give should be able to reverse heart disease if you're still eating the same junk. So I can't completely blame them. That would be almost miraculous. Like keep, causing the disease, keep injuring the body and hope a drug will fix the problem. That's why many times lifestyle change is the best way to go. But what about the safety of it? The German Commission E, this is a commission that's set out in Germany to look at actual natural remedies, to look into them scientifically and find out, are they actually useful and are they safe? And the German Commission reports that Comfrey can be used topically on unbroken skin. Now, by the way, it was used, Nicholas Culpeper said they used to use it internally, but consistently using it internally has been shown to cause like liver disease and actually kill people. So it is not something you don't want to mess around with that. So they suggest only using it on the skin topically for 4 to 6 weeks, but it should not be used continually because of something called PAs, a certain kind of toxic alkaloid. Too much of that can be dangerous, and Comfrey should not be taken internally, they state, and they also suggest not to have more than 100 milligrams externally of these toxic alkaloids daily, and they are linked to cancer in rat studies. And so this is not something to overdo, but using it externally for aches and pains and these kind of things can make an incredible impact.
Because you think about it, a salve is something you use for healing. It's not something you use every day.
Yeah, and the goal of it is not to use it like taking some painkiller every day. It's not. This is not meant to be something that is a painkiller as much as it is to be a healing agent, a balm, right? Like there is a balm in Gilead, right? A healing agent. And so this is something to, I think it's a phenomenal thing to try. And by the way, you can grow it in your own yard, and it's beautiful. So it's like having a beautiful plant, and then if you end up needing some, you can either dig up the roots and use the roots, or you can actually just use the plant. You could wrap it around. I did it just for one night, wrapped it around. Actually, I did it a few times, but when I actually put it and I think wrapped it up maybe once or twice doing that, and just covering it for the night, washing it off in the morning, and it really is just incredible.
And when you grow it on your own, what's really neat is that it works really well as compost.
Incredible.
Like it is great for compost. It'll help grow your other plants really well. So let it grow in abundance.
Yeah. It is. I love this stuff. So why not try to grow it? It's a nice plant just to simply have around. And this is the thing. When we get to the point where it's difficult to buy and sell, having remedies that are growing all around you, you will be very, very thankful. And while we still can easily buy and sell, or semi-easily as we have inflation, it's good to, get some of these things, have them on hand, get the seeds, because could you imagine if all of a sudden, wham, you couldn't get any new seeds? I'm not saying this to scare people, but we just saw in Michigan, just to give you an example. Now, yes, there were other options, but we live in Michigan, and our governor made it so most people live in the bottom half of Michigan, like Detroit. Actually, be this way. Detroit is like over here. Over here is Lansing, and here's Grand Rapids. And almost everybody in Michigan lives from here down. There are people up here, and then in the UP there's a few, but very few people live here and up here. And so, but they knew most people lived in this line here, and they said if you have a country property, this is during the massive outbreak in the beginning of COVID.
You have like a
If you have a country property, a cottage out in the country, they said you are not allowed to leave your city property and go leave to your country property. And we are told that the time is going to come where many desire to go to the country but will not be able to. And I don't believe that was an absolute fulfillment. It's just a picture of how this could happen. And how quickly. Like, who would have expected that? And just whammo, they told you that. And so this is something to consider that.
Oh, and then the seeds.
Yeah, and the other thing was the seeds. That the governor also said that you are not allowed to go buy seeds or garden things during COVID because those were considered non-essential items. And so the point is, you say...
So you would go to like Walmart or something, and they'd have the garden section
cut off. You weren't
allowed
to go. You could be at Walmart, you could buy everything else. You could buy liquor, you could buy all that, but because that was essential, obviously. But the seeds, no, that is non-essential. Growing
and
things.
And we talked about earlier the mental health benefits of gardening. And that's not essential when everybody's locked up in their homes.
Yes, it does. And so, sorry, I get a little sarcastic with this stuff, but the point being, you get the idea that these things can happen, and we're told they're going to happen. And so we are actually told to prepare for these things. And we'll look at that in the next presentation. So let's look at another beneficial remedy.
So in tropical areas, this is a well-known parasite killer.
As a folk remedy.
But, of course, somebody wanted to know, is this just a folk remedy or is it legitimate? And so they did a study.
And by the way, this is not just something like little off thing. Medical corporations actually send employees. They'll go to these indigenous tribes and they'll ask them, when you have a stomach ache, what do you do? And the tribes person says, well, we get this herb and we make a tea out of it. And then the scientists will actually try to find out, well, does it work? Because it could just be an old wives' tale, or it might actually do something. And so these scientific organizations actually want to know, does it work? And so they did this with this historic around the world in the tropical regions. They wanted to know, because people use it everywhere for parasitic infections in the gut. So according to the Center for Disease Control, the CDC, and Prevention, 40 million people in the United States have the Toxoplasma parasite. So you're talking like 10% of Americans have one particular parasite. Does anybody know where the Toxoplasma Gondii comes from? Anybody know?
She said it.
Cats. Yes, from cat feces, right? That's why, what do they say for women that are pregnant not to do? Don't clean the litter box, because often they have Toxoplasma gondii, which increases the rates of birth defects in the children. Blindness is one of them. And after birth, it is actually increases the likelihood of children coming down with schizophrenia. And it increases the risk of depression and anxiety in the people in the home in those situations. And 40 million Americans potentially have this parasite. So something to consider. Now, the study we're going to look at is not on Toxoplasma gondii telling you that it will fix that. I'm just giving you an idea. When we think of parasites, we think of like other countries. We don't think of America. But the point is, plenty of Americans have parasites. So these two studies are not connected, but I'm just pointing out that people have parasites here. So papaya seeds and parasites.
A study reported in the Journal of Medicinal Food of 60 Nigerian children who had parasites in their stool. 30 children were given honey as a placebo, or the equivalent of 4 grams of dried papaya seeds mixed with honey. And, papaya seeds, they taste peppery. If you've ever had them, they're strong.
Like spicy hot.
Spicy hot,
it's not a pleasant experience, just so you know.
It's like a spicy black pepper, and it'll burn your nostrils.
Yeah, like burns up into your nose. It's a strange experience. It's not enjoyable.
So that's why they were putting it in the honey for the kids. And 16.7% of the children who took the honey cleared the parasites, so even honey helped, right? Versus 76.7% of the children who took the papaya seeds and honey.
And I believe it was just one dose.
One dose.
Got rid of it in 3/4 of the people. So maybe multiple times may have gotten rid of the rest.
So again, God has put a remedy in an area in the tropics, right? We don't grow papaya here, and we don't have as many parasites in the north, right? But in the tropics, they have all kinds of parasites. And God's given them something right there that can help them.
And it grows year-round in the tropics. Not all fruit grows year-round, but papaya, you can get, like you go to places like India, and year-round you're able to get papaya. And by the way, it's typically much sweeter in the natural regions there. Often when it gets to the United States, it's kind of a funny flavor, And by the way, if you buy like one of those giant papayas here, they start tasting good when the outside looks like it's getting rotten all over. Like cut away all the rottenness, and then it actually starts tasting good. I had a Mexican guy in the store one time. I was like, hey, because he actually was looking for the rotten-looking ones, because that's when they, in the United States, but when you're in the other countries, it's not necessarily that way. They're ripe. They're probably picked unripe there. What's that? Yes. Yeah. For them, it's ripe, right? Like they pick it and it's good to go. It goes to market. But here, they got to ship it way up here, and you get the idea. So there were no harmful side effects in this particular study.
Because
they didn't overdo it.
They decided to do 1 was better than what? 10.
10, like me, right?
So what did he do?
I've taken too much one time, and it was like the world went into warp speed. I was like, I'm not kidding. It was nuts. It was crazy. Yeah, I was actually at a camp meeting speaking, and I was with James Rafferty, and he said to me, he's like, I used to be like you, all kind of like
Energy.
all crazy energy, and I was like, I just couldn't help it. For like a few hours, I was like a nutcase, and so you can overdo it. Even though that study, they didn't find any side effects, I assure you, you can get enough to get side effects. It wasn't enjoyable either, so.
So we had to admit to James, we're like, James.
We're like, I'm not
yes,
normally like this.
he is high energy, but not this high
No,
energy.
like I felt like I was a full-out spaz for part of a day.
So again, 1 is good, 10 is not.
It's not, yes. Like, we need to be temperate even in good things, right? So, this is a powerful one. Migraine medication. What is that right there? Ginger. By the way, before we even go into that, so what would be better, using a remedy to fight a disease that you have, or learning how to reverse disease so you don't need a remedy? Yeah, reversing it, right? One of the ways, if you struggle, I used to struggle with migraines on a regular basis. Now, I don't struggle with them. And it's because of a change of lifestyle. There's a few different things that can do it. Sometimes it's an allergy to something that could be causing your migraines. Other times, one of the things that I believe you will find that in most people, they will fully reverse their migraines, not even have them anymore, is by going on what's called a whole food diet. And I don't mean vegan. Because vegan, you can still have sugar and Coca-Cola and just refined junk food, tons of oils. You can have all refined foods, and you can still have migraines. When I went on a whole food diet with no sugar and no oil, my migraine, and no red dye 50 and all these things. If you read anything that's not a food, right? If it's a chemical or a processed thing, like, you read on the back of it, you look at bread and it'll have like 30 ingredients you've never heard of. How did they think like, ooh, it'd be good to put some of that in there, right? Probably not. It's probably some kind of preservatives. When you get rid of all that stuff and just eat food, you have a very high likelihood of your migraines just going away and never having them again. It's actually incredible. But if you still do have them and you're not willing to eat better, one of the things you can do is you can actually use this right here. And so to give you an idea, migraine medication, a common medication for migraines is called Imitrex or Sumatriptan. And some of the side effects of it are things like mild headache. Well, that's interesting. I thought it was supposed to help headaches, right? Pain or chest tightness, pressure or heavy feeling in any part of your body, weakness, feeling hot or cold, dizziness, spinning sensation, drowsiness, nausea, vomiting, drooling, unnatural taste in your mouth. Unusual after using nasal spray. Burning, numbness, pain, irritation in your nose or throat after using nasal spray, or flushing, warmth, redness, or tingling under the skin. So you might have some kind of side effects like that from Sumatriptan. Well, they did a study comparing ginger to Sumatriptan for migraines in a double-blind, randomized, controlled trial. Researchers compared the efficacy of ginger to the migraine medication Sumatriptan, 100 people who had migraines without auras. And if you don't know what that is, good news, you probably don't have migraines with more auras. But they were randomly given, I'll tell you what it is. I used to get them. The way I would know I was going to get a migraine, all of a sudden I would start seeing a shining light off in the distance, and it was like, oh no, it's coming, because the headache wouldn't hit yet. And then it would start it's different for different people. For me, it would be the shining light that would start shining more and more. And it looked like, to me, I called it the spiral, or it looked like a, you know what a slinky is? It kind of looked like a slinky that was made of molten bright, I don't know, silver or something like that. And so I would see it, it's like, oh no. And then I'd get a blind spot where I couldn't see there, so I wouldn't be able to read something directly in front of me. And then the headache would hit, and for a couple days I'd be really tired and weak, But that's what an aura was, my experience with an aura. But let's look out. Within 2 hours, both groups saw a significant decrease in migraine pain, and the benefit for both groups was statistically significant. Similar, rather. And what do you think would be safer? Pretty simple, right? Now, one other thing, research has been done on menstrual pain compared with drug medication, head-to-head, for women who suffer with this, And what they used, and this is the actual, if you want to know how to do it, 1/8 teaspoon 4 times a day of ginger. And what they found, it was just as effective as the medication. So 1/8 teaspoon. So I'll tell you, my wife, when she has serious pain, she hasn't had to take it in a while, but I would often, especially in the winter, it's harder in the winter because it's cold and so forth, but I will literally go, you can either use it fresh or you can use it dried. So what I would do is I could just, and we found in the end it was just easier to use the dried. So just we buy, like at the Amish store, I think we bought it in Ohio, but the Amish store in Ohio, they had these like big containers of cheap dried ginger. And so she's struggling. I would take that 1/8 teaspoon, dump it in a cup. I'd typically warm up the water just so it wasn't too cold because that was kind of hard on her. So some warm water, and then I would take maybe a good scoop of honey and put it in there. And sometimes we would use something else, no?
Lemon, but not
lemon, but
mint,
most of the time we wouldn't actually do the lemon. We just do the honey and the ginger. And by the way, it tastes good anyway. So it's kind of just a nice flavored drink. And so she would take that and it would make a significant impact on her pain. And research has actually shown that. That's not just an old wives' tale. It actually, you don't need the honey. You can do it without the honey. It just, a spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down kind of thing, right? So you get the idea. And so for migraines and for menstrual pain, it is just as effective as medication. Were you going to share something or no?
I also found, because the ginger sometimes affects my stomach and then makes me a little more irritated.
Me too. It makes me cranky, to be honest with you.
And so I was like, I really don't want this, because I don't like the side effects of the ginger. And so I just kept praying, like, Lord, give me something. And then it hit me, what happens during my period, sometimes I get really bad bouts of diarrhea, like the two go together, and it would just make me super weak. And then the idea came, like, I remember when I used to fast once a week, it would help me. I had better periods then. So I said, maybe I should start doing that again. And then the second thing that came to mind was, Paul tells Timothy that for your stomach's sake, you should take grape juice. So I thought, that's a remedy right there. Why don't I try that, And so I started to do that. And what I do is, during the period, I will drink the grape juice, and it settles my stomach. Like, it settles it like you wouldn't believe, and then the pain's just gone. It's amazing, you guys. It's just absolutely amazing. And then sometimes I can, even before the meal, drink some of the juice. It settles my stomach, and then I can eat. Because normally if I ate, it would cause me pain, and then I'd be in the bathroom. So this is just like incredible. I mean, this is a Bible remedy, right? And it doesn't get any better than that. So, yeah, we need to.
We got to close. Okay, I think we're actually, here's the last slide, so we're done. Perfect. Huh. I think he said 35, and we got about 1 minute. So let's close with our last verse. Revelation 22:2 says, in the midst of the street of it, and on either side of the river was there the tree of life, which bare 12 manner of fruits, and yielded her fruit every month. And the leaves of the tree were for the what?
Healing of the nation.
And that's a strange thing, because that's in heaven. And it seems there's going to be an herbal remedy in heaven. Isn't that interesting? And I'll tell you what, when we learn to use them well here on planet Earth, it's better to live a lifestyle that we can avoid it as much as possible, like not being in a moldy basement like I went through, right? But it's better to avoid disease. But when we do have disease, God has given us incredible, and you see the research, compared head-to-head with drug medication, they typically have significantly less side effects, and they are given to us by our Creator to help heal us. So let's close with prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you for your word. Thank you for the plants that you've given to us, many of them growing wild all around us, that can heal us. We've often got so far away from them, and because of a system that has taught us that these things are quackery, and there's a whole system of why that happened, we've begun to doubt your healing powers that you've placed all around us. Lord, I pray that we would learn to be people who can learn these things and not only learn them, that we could learn them so well that we could share with our neighbors who are suffering. We're told the time is coming once again where there's going to be plenty of suffering people all around us. And we thought a few years ago, how could that be? We have the hospital to take care of all disease. But now we all get it. Oh, there's going to be disease all around us. And Father, help us to help be a part of your healing work with the people around us, that we can be a blessing to them and that they would be more open to you, your natural ways, and that their mind would be more open so that they would be more prone to accepting the truth for these last days. We ask in Jesus' name. Amen.